So there are definitely 1 million videos about this already on YouTube, but I wanted to make my own because I feel like I have new and different ideas about what it was that actually killed the MCU. Me personally, I think they just bit off way more than they could chew. In the wise words of Lie Chan, let's just keep this simple. That's why the early MCU movies were so peak. Imagine I were giving you a writing prompt. I would say something like, write about your favorite memory with a grandparent. You would think about it for a few minutes, then probably write something pretty good with a clear focus that tells me a lot about that grandparent as a person, as well as how you are as a person. On the other hand, if I said, write about your favorite people, you'd most likely come up with a messy stream of consciousness rambling about how cool all your friends and family are, which would result in me not knowing much about any of them or about you. At the start of the MCU, they were very limited in what they could use. The prompt was Marvel heroes, but not the popular ones, no Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, and even using the Hulk was a bit iffy. They could basically only use Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and various unpopular heroes. But of course, to start out, they only wanted to use the heroes that people sort of already knew. As they went on, they then started to get overconfident and feel like they needed to include every Marvel hero in the world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get there when we get there. But for now, let's just appreciate how they made these Nugu-ass heroes cultural icons. The general consensus is that Endgame was the turning point for the MCU. That was the moment the movie started getting bad. I've also seen people say Endgame itself was bad, which I agree. I saw another really smart YouTuber say the second the MCU started going downhill was the after credits of Infinity War when they teased Captain Marvel with the 90s pager. While these are all super smart and valid opinions, I disagree. I think the turning point for the MCU was even earlier than that. I think it was Captain America: Civil War. Just to be clear, I don't hate this movie. I even still enjoy watching it, but what it represents is the beginning of an era trying to shove in way too many heroes, way too many storylines, just way too much. They've been including new heroes and other heroes' movies since the beginning. When they introduced Black Widow and Iron Man 2 and Hawkeye and Thor, their introductions worked well with the story and made perfect sense. If the only new hero in Civil War was Black Panther, I would have zero complaints. I loved his inclusion in Civil War, and I think it added a lot to the story and served as a great intro for his character. Spider-Man, on the other hand, so I love Spider-Man. I have since I was a kid. I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt while writing this. I use a Spider-Man calendar to keep track of my schedule. I even went as Spider-Man for Halloween. But I hated this introduction to Spider-Man. All it did was make Tony look even more like an asshole in this movie. Like, why are we blackmailing a 15-year-old to fight military-trained super soldiers in a battle that he does not understand in the slightest? When Cap told Spider-Man there's a lot going on that you don't understand, and Spider-Man replies, Mr. Stark says you would say that. That is just the most frustrating line in the entire MCU. Why is Peter so easily manipulated here? I get that he's young and he wants to please Iron Man because he wants a father figure, but in what world would Spider-Man beat up a bunch of people who he's only ever been told were heroes just because some dude tells him to? In what world would he not even question what they're fighting about? This is Spider-Man we're talking about. Spider-Man who tries to appeal to the humanity of even the most vile villains, but he's gonna fight these heroes just because he wants Iron Man to think he's cool. Fine, whatever. To be honest, I could get past all of that if this wasn't the most rushed character intro of all time. This movie is already trying to squeeze in so much. This Captain America movie, mind you. And now we have to make time to introduce such a complicated and well-loved character. We know nothing about him, we have no time with him, and most importantly, he has nothing to do with this story. In the comics, Spider-Man was very much entwined with the Civil War storyline, and I think they wanted to honor that in the cheapest and least effort way possible by just airdropping him into the middle of the story. Just have Tony Stark say, you sure you don't want to come to the airport with me? Well, that's fine, but it sure would be a shame if someone told your aunt about your secret identity. And bam, Spider-Man's forcibly included. Crazy, by the way. Ant-Man also should not have been in this movie. Me personally, I would have liked to see more Captain America in this Captain America movie, but I digress. It's not just characters, but storylines as well. These big, ambitious comic book storylines like Civil War only worked in the comics because of the decades of build-up and development and the fact that the people really knew all of these characters. Secret Wars, the Multiverse Saga, even the Kang Saga are much better fit for comics or TV shows because you just don't have enough time in 1 or 2 movies. You can't fit this all in. It's much better to make the most of a simple concept than to just barely scratch the surface of a more complex concept. The best example of this is the Sokovia Accords, which is a version, sort of the Hero Registration Act from the comics, and we also saw it in the first X-Men movie. I think it's a really, really interesting concept that we spend maybe 10 minutes discussing in the films, until it's completely forgotten about forever. It's like how back when ATs had a budget of $20 in a Pringle can, they had to rely on their creativity, talent, and skill alone for their craft, whereas now that they got money, they think they can just do anything, and I don't even know what the freak they're doing anymore. Like ATs, the MCU was so much better when they were forced to use their creativity to tell a story rather than just throwing money at it until something good happens. Just because you can cast RDJ as Doctor Doom doesn't mean you should. And the crazy thing is that the best parts of Civil War were the Captain America stuff, not the big showdowns or the comic book cameos. The visuals, future movie setups, and cameos are supposed to just be a nice extra touch in the movies, not the whole appeal of them. The MCU got cocky and overconfident and thought that magic and aliens weren't enough. They thought that they needed to go bigger and better for each new installment and up the ante so the audience would stay interested. And now they are just truly biting off more than they can chew, like I said, attempting to dip their toes in every comic book storyline in the world, but never actually committing to any one of them. And some of it just isn't their fault. I guess they were going to go all in with Kang before the Jonathan Majors stuff happened, but even back then it felt like there were 800 things going on top of the Kang stuff. The 10 Rings, the Sokovia Accords, the Eternals, the Multiverse, the TVA, the Red Room, the Watcher, etc. But at least we don't have to worry about the Infinity Stones anymore. At least that one single plot line is done and dealt with. But what do you think? What was the moment you think the MCU started to go downhill? Do you agree that they're doing too much? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See y'all!